Welcome. I have the honor of facilitating a conversation with two very distinguished planning leaders from the San Francisco Bay Area. So on my right is Charlie Bryant, who retired as the Community Development Director from the city of Emeryville. And on my left is Dan Marks, who retired as his last position was Planning and Development Director for the city of Berkeley, though he was also Community Development Director for the city of Fremont and is now working as a planning consultant. I'm Hanson Holm, and all three of us have parallel careers in the Bay Area, and that we all were community development directors for many years for several Bay Area cities. So in this tight-knit network of Bay Area planners, I've often crossed paths with both Dan and Charlie, and we've known each other for many years, too many years to count. I think collectively we probably have over 100 years of planning experience, which, sorry if that ages us, but it does. And I've always had a deepest respect for both of their work, and I think they're exceptionally role models in the planning profession. So I'm really excited to have a conversation with both of them, and we share thoughts about their career, but also about planning in general, and also specifically the public sector and working in the Bay Area. So I've long admired their strong values, ideals, and leadership qualities. So thank you, both of you, for agreeing to this conversation and interview. So to begin with, I'd like each of you to maybe provide a brief introduction of who you are and your resume, or not formally, but Charlie, do you want to start?
Sure. So the Cliff Notes version of my bio, I was born and raised in Southern California. And as soon as I turned 18, I left LA as fast as I could. Got as far from LA as I could. I ended up going to college in Boston. So I was at MIT there for 4 years. I majored in architecture, and I can talk more about that later, about why that came to be. And then after I graduated, I stayed in Boston for a total of 10 years. I got a job with the U.S. General Services Administration as what was called a community planner, which is really inaccurate because I was not planning communities. I was planning federal facilities in communities in New England. So that was interesting. I did that for 5 years, and then I decided to go to graduate school. I came back to California, this time to the Bay Area, where my ancestors are from. And I went to Cal, and I did 2 master's degrees at Cal, one in architecture and one in city planning. While I was at Cal, I got a job as an intern in the Oakland City Planning Department, and I ended up staying in Oakland for a total of 18 years. Eventually ended up as a senior planner and as the secretary of the Planning Commission. And then an opportunity opened up for the planning director job in Emeryville, which I applied for and miraculously somehow got. And I stayed as the planning director of Emeryville. First, my title was Director of Planning and Building, and then it became Community Development Director when a couple of departments were merged. And I stayed in Emeryville a total of 23 years, retired in September a couple of years ago, and I've been retired ever since, focusing mostly on family history and traveling.
Great.
So that's my CV in a nutshell.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And Dan?
Well, first of all, Hanson, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It's kind of fun to think about your career and talk to other people about them. Charlie, I hadn't realized that 2 of us grew up in L.A. Grew up in L.A. also. If I knew it, I'd forgotten it.
Where?
West L.A.
You forgot that you grew up in LA?
No, I forgot that you did.
He's trying to forget.
I have forgotten it.
I was in the San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah, very different parts of Los Angeles. So we both grew up in L.A. Then I came up to Cal to get my undergraduate degree, and then then I was a teacher for 6 years, elementary school, and then went back to Cal to get my master's degree in planning at DCRP. We graduated in the same class, if I'm not mistaken.
70.
No.
One?
No,
80. I'm sorry, 80.
80.
81.
I thought it was 80. I think we're in the same Pretty close.
Okay, I was 81 for MCP
Yeah.
and 82 for architecture.
Yeah, I was 80 for my MCP. So
Okay.
got my master's degree at Cal, and then worked for a couple of nonprofits. Worked for what is now called the Greenbelt Alliance. Now was then called People for Open Space, which is a regional planning organization. Did there what I think of as a wonderful study of regional growth and how to manage regional growth. Really, the first smart growth study in the country, as far as I'm concerned. And then went to SPUR for a little while, also a San Francisco Planning and Urban Research Association. Did a work on a South of Market study there. That was a very enjoyable project. And then I had to find a real job after working for the nonprofits. Worked for a couple of consulting firms in San Francisco. One was a landscape and planning firm. Then I worked for an EIR firm for a while. Then I worked for BART for a while. Then I worked for... after BART, I ended up getting a job in the city of Napa for a little while as a planner. Worked there as associate planner, then a principal planner, then worked my way up the field to zoning administrator in the city of Berkeley. Then planning director. Oh no, I missed a few years there. After I was a consultant for a while, I wrote this City of Fremont general plan. That was a fun project for 2 years as an associate planner, contract associate planner. Then I went to Napa. Then to Berkeley, then back to Fremont as planning director, where I helped implement the general plan I'd written, which was really kind of a great opportunity. And then back to Berkeley, where I was community development director, or what we then called planning and development director. And I retired out of Berkeley, and for the last, almost 14 years, I have been a management consultant for local government planning organizations, looking at how they're organized, suggesting ways for them to improve the way they provide services. That's what I've been doing across the country now for the last 14 years.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So all three of us, we have a long career primarily in the public sector, working for cities. So that's a common bond. And now I find out that all three of us went to Berkeley. Yeah. Though you guys were in the graduate planning program, I was in the landscape architecture program as an undergraduate. But, common roots. So go Bears for those who...
Go Bears.
Sorry for those who are not Cal Berkeley fans. So, I know that when we've interviewed planners, how they came to profession is all different ways. Some of us haphazardly, some more deliberately. So we all ended up in the same place, but we may have different stories of how we got to where we are. So maybe Dan, to begin with, what drew you to planning profession? How early that you want to be a planner, and specifically, why did you favor a career in the public sector?
Well, the public sector is an interesting question, but why did I go into planning? Well, I think Charlie and I both grew up in LA, and when I first came to San Francisco, I realized how much I love cities. San Francisco, it was just such a different experience than growing up in Los Angeles. It was a city. It had excitement. It had energy. It had things going on and places to walk and things to do, and I just loved it. Just loved being in San Francisco. And I realized how much I love cities. And so that was when I took a course as an undergrad in, I don't know what it was called, it was an interdisciplinary course in planning. It was basically a planning course with a bunch of really good people. And it got me very interested in city planning as an undergrad. I think it was my junior year that I took that course. It was an actual full-year course, 3 quarters. Got me very excited about about the idea of planning. What I loved about planning, and city planning in particular, was, on the one hand, it's visionary. You're thinking about the future and what the kind of future you want to have. It's a little idealistic. But the goal of planning is, how do you make that happen? What are the tools and the techniques you use to make it happen? So it's very practical. It's pragmatic. And so those combination of both vision and pragmatism was what drew me, I think, what I loved about the idea of planning. I took a little detour when I became a teacher for 6 years, but eventually I realized I really wanted to go back to school and get the planning degree, and I did. Came back to Cal and got a planning degree and was able to then go forward with my career. What drew me to the public sector, well, was more or less accidental for me.
Yeah, a lot of our careers are accidental.
I loved being a consultant, actually, but I couldn't find a job as a consultant. And eventually you get the job, got a job in Fremont writing the general plan, which was something I really wanted to do.
Which consultants do.
But in that case, I was an employee of the city. I managed it as an employee of the city. And after a few years doing that, it's a long story, but I saw that there was some problems in coming along the economy, and so I took the jobs. I had a family that I had to support, And so I stuck to the public sector because it was safe and available, and I found another job after Fremont. I was a contract planner in Fremont, and I had to leave after 3 years, so I went off. I got the job in Napa, and then I was in the public sector. So after that, I was a public sector employee.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What about your story, Charlie? Is it similar or
Well,
different?
how much time do we have? I thought when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be an architect. I had never heard of city planning, didn't know what it was, although my cousin and I are about the same age. When we'd get together, we used to like to draw cities on little pieces of paper, and we were planning cities out, but we didn't really know that there was something called city planning. We just had fun drawing streets and buildings and stuff. But my mother, I think, always would have liked to have been an architect. She actually helped to design a couple of the houses that I lived in when I was a kid. And I grew up in a suburb of LA that was really being built out at the time. It was like a new suburb, lots of construction going on. And one of the things my mother used to like to do was to take me and my sisters out for walks around the neighborhood, and we'd look at these houses that were under construction. We'd walk through the stud walls and stuff and try to figure out which room was which. And sometimes the blueprints would be lying around. And so we would look at the blueprints and we would compare to what we saw and say, oh, that must be the bathroom and that must be the kitchen. And so I learned how to read blueprints because of my mother when I was about 6 or 7 years old.
Wow.
So I and my brother-in-law was a landscape architect. I used to work for him in the summertime. So I grew up kind of thinking I wanted to be an architect. So when I went to college, I majored in architecture because that's what I thought I wanted to do. When I was at MIT, they have a very good planning program, as you may know, which I discovered when I was there, and I took a couple of courses in it. One of my professors was Kevin Lynch, and he actually brought in a guest speaker one day that none of us young kids had ever heard of, but this old guy, his name was Louis Mumford. And so he gave us a little guest lecture one day, which was kind of interesting. Later, I learned who all these guys were. I was here in the presence of greatness and didn't really know it. But anyhow, I thought about doing a double major with planning and architecture while I was there. But by the time I had figured that out, it was like my last semester. And if in order to do a double major, I would have had to stay an extra year. And I really didn't want to do that. I was anxious to get out of there. So I left MIT and drove a taxi cab for a year. Although for a city planner, I got to say, that is very educational.
You got to know the city.
I learned Boston and Cambridge like the back of my hand. It was really interesting. So then I went to work for GSA, and which of course you can't get much more public sector than that. And we were in this sixth floor office in a federal building in downtown Boston, planning facilities throughout New England, and we had public notification requirements for these things, like I guess everybody does, and our public notifications were printed in the Federal Register. So some little town in Podunk, New Hampshire would be getting a new Social Security office or something. We would publish a notice in the Federal Register, and guess what? Nobody in Podunk, New Hampshire saw the notice for some reason. Go figure. So people could come to our office and look at the files if they wanted to. I was there for 5 years. Not a single person ever came to look at anything because nobody knew about it, or they probably didn't really care that much anyway. But
Some
so,
would feel that's a blessing.
well, yes, but as an aspiring planner by this time, I felt like I really want to work with communities. I want to get out there and talk to real people, and not just be sequestered in this federal office. So when I went back to graduate school, I decided I was still interested in architecture, though I still had a design bent. So I did a double major in planning and architecture at Cal, the so-called joint program in urban design, which wasn't really a program then. It was just you did architecture and you did planning and you called it urban design. But so that's what I did. But I kind of realized in both at MIT and at Cal that architecture wasn't really for me. Because, first of all, I wasn't that talented as a designer. But also, I mean, with all due respect to all my architect friends, they, as Dan well knows, they tend to have kind of big egos, and their clients tend to be kind of well-to-do, either corporations or individuals, and they're kind of building monuments to themselves and to their clients, which I know is a cliche, but there's a lot of truth to it. And they're not all that interested in the public good, which is what planners are all about. So, long story short, I gravitated more towards planning because it was more interested in the public good and the public realm than in building monuments to wealthy clients. In the first year of my graduate curriculum, shall we say, at Cal, we had a gathering of the new incoming planning students. And at that gathering where I first met my colleagues, I guess you wouldn't have been there if you were already in the program, probably a year before me. But when I first met the people who would then become, some of whom would become my lifelong friends, I realized for the first time, these are my people. These are fellow planners. They have the same values and goals that I do, and that's when it really gelled in my mind that planning is what I want to do. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying how I got into planning.
Well, hearing both of you guys' stories, it sounds really similar, and it probably parallels mine. Taking a planning course, key. I actually was landscape architect major. And when I took a planning course, that's when, and it turned out that's actually what I always wanted to be before I knew there was planning, what it was. But
I don't want to put in a pitch for landscape architecture.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have all three at Cal, landscape planning and architecture. And I always admired the landscape students because I feel like landscape architecture has much more of a bent towards the public realm
sector
than architecture does. Landscape architects are interested in the public spaces and the space between buildings and so forth, but they can also draw. And they can design stuff. So they're like planners who can draw. Which I really
but I found
admire.
out landscape architect, we didn't have to do as much work. So not as many all-nighters. You
got to learn all those plants.
Yeah.
That's where I fell down.
I enjoyed that, actually.
I don't have a mind for that.
So both of you obviously are a long time in the public sector. One of the common questions we ask is what advice would you give to planners who are thinking about the planning profession and why to enter it? And even more specifically, it's like, why the public sector? What drew you? I know, Dan, you said it was an accident, but I'm sure there's some really positive attributes that you've enjoyed since both of you have worked so long in the public sector. So why planning and why the public sector? So Dan, maybe we'll switch.
You want advice to young planners?
Yeah,
Is that what we're asking for?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of things. One thing I would say is never stop dreaming. Never stop having crazy, outlandish ideas. In Emeryville, we occasionally would have a studio class from Cal come, and the students would come and study some part of Emeryville and come up with plans that they would then present to the planning commissioner of the city council, which was always great for us. And a lot of the ideas were pretty outlandish, and pretty unrealistic, and they'd be poo-pooed by some of my colleagues. But my attitude was just go for it. I mean, come up with the crazy, outlandish ideas, because if you don't have these crazy ideas, if you don't dream it, it's certainly never going to happen. So don't be afraid to have crazy ideas. What
about a challenge? What if should planners be aware of that's challenging working?
They need to rein in their egos.
Yeah.
They need to not be too vested in what they think is the right thing to do. I mean, at the same time that they're having crazy ideas and dreaming and stuff, that's fine. But you have to be pragmatic. Dan mentioned pragmatism being an important aspect of planning, and that's absolutely true. You have to be realistic about what can and can't be done. And I think one thing, maybe more than anything else, is you got to develop a thick skin.
Yeah.
You really got to be able to take criticism. Don't take stuff personally. If you get beat down for your ideas, or either by your city manager or your planning commissioner or your city council, just bounce back up again. And
Members of the public.
Or oh yeah, for sure. Don't be belligerent. Don't dig in your heels and refuse to give, but also don't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, it's all a challenge. It's dealing with the public and dealing with the public's elected and appointed officials is always a challenge. But you just got to learn to kind of temper it and learn when to keep your mouth. Never be afraid to keep your mouth shut. Some good advice I once got from the police chief.
Otherwise, you were going to be arrested.
Yeah, right.
Fired, more likely.
Yeah.
Never miss an opportunity to keep your mouth shut. That's what he used to say.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
So Dan, what are your reflections
I
as
think-
far as the pluses and minuses of advice you give to planners?
Charlie's right on most of what he said, on all of what he said, actually, not most of what he said, but all of what he said. Being a planner in the public sector can be a very frustrating place to be. We all know that, having been there for a while. You have to check your ego at the door. That's exactly right. The advice I often give people that are coming in, when you become a planner for a reason. You want to make a difference. You want to change the world in some fashion, right? That's why most people become planners. Well, the problem is that you don't get to make the decisions about how the world's going to change. When you work for a city, the people that make those decisions are called city council members and planning commissioners, and you are at their mercy. You can come in with all the ideas you want, but it's not your ideas that matter. It's the ideas of the planning commission, the city council, and if they don't align with your own values, then you're probably in the wrong city, and that can be a problem for some planners. You have to that's checking your ego at the door, checking some of your ideas at the door. You have to make compromises almost right away in the public sector. The other thing that I always remind people, especially for long-range planners, is that the ideas that you have today may not reach fruition for 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why I stayed in Oakland for 18 and Emeryville for 23.
I'm in awe of Charlie because he was there for the incredible transformation of Emeryville, and just amazing what happened.
I actually got to see a few of the projects I started get built.
Yes, well, and that's the joy of being in the public sector. Especially if they're long enough, but even if you're not there long enough, some ideas that I had in Fremont 30, 40 years ago are only now coming into fruition. I can see those ideas coming into fruition. In Berkeley, it's happened a little faster. Some of the stuff that I was working on a few years ago in Berkeley's been transformed. I think most people would say in the last 15 years. And I can say proudly that I helped lay the foundation for that.
It's amazing. Downtown looks great.
Yeah, it's doing they're doing some really great stuff there. And I can say, again, that 20 years ago, I laid the foundation for that. It takes that long. Well, it was 15 years ago from there. I had some ideas that I had about San Francisco when I worked for Spur. It took 20 years. But now I can look at some parts of San Francisco. Whoa, those are ideas that we had 20 years ago. And now they're there. And that's just an amazing, but it takes a long, especially on the policy planning and on the visionary stuff, it takes a long, long time. And people can get pretty frustrated with that. They don't see change right away.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, both of you obviously have had a big impact on both Berkeley and Emeryville. I mean, most of the plans I've worked on, you don't see any results till after I've left that.
Yeah, well, that was true for me too.
Right. Yeah.
The longest place I was in was Berkeley, 8 years. I mean, as I said, I'm in awe of Charlie, who's really got to be there for a long time and see those
I'm not
changes.
sure awe is quite the right word.
Well,
but
no, I am. Emeryville's what happened in Emeryville is just remarkable.
Celebrate the successes, Well, obviously, Dan, you have a really strong passion for planning as far as long as I've known you, and Charlie the same way. So I wanted to kind of get into more the personal side of things. Is starting with you, Dan. What core values or foundational beliefs have guided your planning career? What are some of those?
Cities. What's guided me is cities are the embodiment. I'll use these words of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know.
you sound pretty woke.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry, guys, but that's...
Don't worry, we can edit that out.
Okay. You may have to in a little while longer.
Just keep this interview in the can for about 3 years, and then you won't have to edit it out.
Yeah, that's
let's
true.
hope so. But anyway, and to the degree that we can continue, and they're also the wellspring of culture, of learning, of all kinds of important things that make our society what it is today. Cities are the birthplace of all of that, and the ways in which we can try to encourage that to happen as planners, make sure that they continue to be homes for diversity for everyone, that they continue to bring in new people, diversity, that the more that we can make them more equitable, and that's housing, of course, is of course our big issue right now. Those are the things that drive me. How do we continue to do the things that make those cities the important things, the important places, and the embodiment of those values today, in the future?
What about you?
I would second everything that Dan said. I think one thing that really attracted me to Emeryville, and Dan earlier mentioned People for Open Space, which I have been a proud member of for many years. Or what's the other? Greenbelt
Alliance now.
Which is it now? It's Greenbelt Alliance now?
Yes.
And it was People for Open
was-
Space. Yeah, I
was-
can never remember which is which. But anyway, the whole notion about green belts and ag land and low density development in the fringes of the urban area, complemented by high density development in the urban core. I mean, those two things go hand in hand. And the more higher density development you have in the core area of the urban region, the less you have to have suburban sprawl with little ticky-tacky tract homes, going on for miles and miles and miles. And Emeryville, to me, is the counterpart to the regional stuff on the fringes of the region. It's the high-density urban core. It's where you get the large, apartment and condo buildings, and which provides opportunities for more transit and bicycle and pedestrian access and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's kind of planning 101, I guess, for some people. But it's not in the nature of other, like where Dan and I grew up. It's not like that there. So that's one of my core values. And I think just the notion of the public sector and your bosses really are the people. And that's really true. It sounds like a cliche, but I would always remind my staff that you work for the people of Emeryville in our case. And that's literally true, because my boss maybe is the city manager, and the city manager is hired by the city council, but the city council is hired by the voters of the community. And if they don't like what the city manager does or what the city council does, they can vote them out and vote somebody else in. So in a very real way, we directly worked for the people of Emeryville, and that's an important value. So it's an important thing for young planners to be aware of, that they work for the people. And, we were talking about this earlier, but the notion that you may not align necessarily 100% with the way they think, but sometimes our city council would make decisions that I didn't agree with. And I'd say, well, I gave you my best professional recommendation. You decided what you wanted to decide. That's your prerogative. And this is your city. I didn't and do not live in Emeryville. So I'm like, this is your city, not mine. So it's your decision to make.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And and I've seen the transformation of Emeryville. I was born in the Bay Area, so I remember when Emeryville was this industrial town that you would drive by on the way back to Berkeley and from. So that transformation that you oversaw is really incredible.
When my mother was younger, she would drive through Emeryville with her grandfather, and he would point out the Pabco paint factory where he was on the board of directors.
Whoa.
I'm sure as you kind of oversaw that transformation of the city, there were probably some personal and professional challenges you encountered. And can you kind of talk about an example and talk about what the outcome was and what you kind of learned or lessons learned?
Me first?
Yeah.
Okay. I was kind of ruminating on this one. I haven't been able to come up with a real great example, but I've got one that I think was somewhat instructive. And I'd say that the lesson learned was that perception is more important than reality. And what the people want via their city council is what the people get, whether you agree with it or not. So in this case, as you probably know, the first IKEA in Northern California is in Emeryville. There are a couple others now, but that was the first one. And it's kind of outgrown its giant big box store big blue box building, and they wanted to open up a separate distribution or pickup facility. So this is the idea is that if you order something, if you go into IKEA and you buy something really big, like a refrigerator or whatever it is, it takes up a lot of space in their warehouse. They wanted to move these big items to an off-site location so that they could store more smaller stuff in their warehouse. And they found a building in Emeryville, a big industrial building that was half empty, that seemed like the perfect place for it. The idea is you go to IKEA, you buy the thing, and then they call the warehouse and you drive over there to pick it up. And by the time you get there, they have it on the loading dock waiting to put in your pickup truck, hopefully, or whatever you've got to carry it away. So it seemed like a reasonable concept. The place that they picked happened to be right next to a residential neighborhood. It wasn't in a residential neighborhood, but there was one right next door. Originally, they had the design, it had it all tricked out to look like an IKEA store. And we said, that's not a good idea because people are going to drive by there and they're going to think it's IKEA and they're going to try to stop and go shopping. And so why don't you tone it down a little bit? So they listened to us and they redesigned it. And we did a whole bunch of studies. I think we did a mitigated neg deck, as I recall. And we did a traffic study and an air quality study and a noise study. We had all these, reputable consultants doing all these studies. And the conclusion was that there were no impacts. Maybe we had a few mitigation measures, but essentially there were no impacts of any of this stuff. We took the project to the Planning Commission. They approved it. I can't recall if it was unanimous or not, but I know they approved it. And it immediately got appealed by the next door neighbors who had come to the public hearing. And they said, we don't care what your studies say.
Traffic.
We don't believe them. We think there will be traffic. We think there will be noise. We think there will be air pollution.
Don't confuse us with the facts.
Don't confuse me with facts. My mind is made up.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so they appealed the approval to the city council. The city council unanimously overturned the planning commission and denied the project and told IKEA, sorry, go look somewhere else. The city's largest single sales tax source was told, you cannot build this warehouse here. Sorry. And what I took from that was that, it doesn't matter what your studies say. What matters is what people perceive, and especially what your city council perceives. This kind of lesson is probably long since learned by people in other places. It was the first time for me that it had been so blatant is not exactly the right word, but so obvious, so clear that this is what the people perceive. This is what their elected officials therefore also perceive. So planners, tough. We're going to not go with your recommendation.
Yeah. That's an example of leaving your ego at the door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm sure, Dan, you've worked on so many projects in the different cities.
And every one of them has been successful. I have no idea.
Okay, then we can move on to the next question.
That's what I've always admired about you.
Every one of my projects
So
has gone
how do you
perfectly
do
well.
that, Dan? What except can
Actually,
you bring up?
the one since I was thinking about this question, since you gave us the questions in advance, I was trying to say what's a good one and the one that I came up with is actually fairly recent. Since I've been a consultant, actually. My firm was asked to be the project managers, come in and fix a project that had gone south for a city. It's along the peninsula. I'm not going to name the city, but people that know the project will know a little bit about which city it is. But the project was that, and I'll name the company also, there was a business park in this community, but that was built probably in the 1970s. It was an old business park. It wasn't doing very well. Had a lot of empty space, big parking lots, classic business park, huge parking lots and small buildings set back and a lot of open space. It was a nice old business park. It was, as I said, not doing well. But Peninsula right now is very hot for a lot of high-tech firms, and a major high-tech firm, a big one of the biggest, in fact, probably it is one of the biggest, came along and said, we want to locate some of our facilities here. We want to build this up. And the city said, okay, let's do a specific plan, and we'll rethink what this business park can be as part of a specific plan. They had a community development director who decided that this business park we should go to new urbanist approach in this business park. He was going to put a communities thing in the middle. He was going to do housing around it, blah, blah, blah. But the tech firm that was actually sponsoring and paying for it, all they wanted was a lot of development. And all they wanted was to fit their development. And they were going to buy most of the business park, tear down much of what was there, and go up. That was their vision. And they didn't match at all. New city manager comes along and says, and the tech firm goes to him and says, this isn't working for us. And the city manager looked and said, oh, money. If we do a specific plan and a development agreement, we can probably negotiate something from this big tech firm because they can afford it. They're going to give the city a bunch of money. We'll have some jobs. We'll have some new investment. This is great for the city. So they brought us in because the community development director that had been leading it was leaving, had left actually. So we come in and we look at it and we say, I agreed with, actually, I was there with a colleague of mine, and we said, no, we're not, you can't take a business park and turn it into something entirely different. It's not suited for that change. And so we actually agreed with the tech firm that this was better suited as an office park, which is what it was. And said, okay, we're going to make this change. But we were dealing with this tech firm that said, this is what we want. And our job at that point was to try to figure out how do we get something out of them when the city manager and most of the city council said, just let them have what they want. Just give them what they want, basically was the attitude that we felt we were working against. And we had some professional, apropos our comments about, well, don't bring your own values to the table. We had professional values that we felt needed to be put into that project, related to streetscape, open space, walling off the tech firm had real legitimate concerns about security, so their vision was walls. In lots of places where we said, no, we don't want walls. We don't want these big buildings that are walled off from the community. We don't want, they were going to block off all their open space and put walls around it. So we had a little bit of a disagreement with them, but we had to work towards our professional values. The lesson learned there, we got a lot, I think, considering what the tech firm wanted, the lack of support from the city manager and from the city council for anything, because they just saw money. And that's a real problem in California in general, which I'm sure all of us have now, well, except Charlie with who took the largest sales tax generating company in the city, and they ignored it. But for most of us in the real world that we operate, and I didn't experience this much in Berkeley either, by the way, which is an interesting part of Berkeley, but elsewhere in the country where cities are struggling for financial health, almost every city that I've worked in has had problems with its fiscal health. The idea of a major company coming in with offering the city hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, isn't something you can turn down. It's why we permit Costco's where we don't want them. We permit Walmart's where we don't want them. It's $1 million in sales tax. Fiscal zoning is so powerful, and we all faced it, and we've all made compromises because of it. And that's, to me, is the frustrating thing about working in the public sector, because money drives it all. And not all, but too much of it.
Too much,
And that's another frustration that I didn't mention about the public sector. The lessons, the rewards, well, we got something out of the project. I think I've not gone back to look at it since they started developing it, but I think the streetscape work that we did was actually very nice. The access for this complete streets work, we got some complete streets, some bicycle lanes, some good pedestrian. So we got something out of the deal. But boy, fighting a major tech firm with the kind of dollars they have behind them and their consultants and everybody else was tough. It's a challenge.
Having worked in the Silicon Valley,
that
story is.
That sounds very familiar. That's right. You should know.
I could almost guess what those companies were, but I won't have you disclose that. Sometimes it's just those small successes, that you get.
You gotta get as much out of those projects as you can.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Given the support you've got from whatever bodies you can get support from.
And since then, you mentioned that all your projects have been successful. Can you? What's one accomplishment that you are particularly proud of? And I'll be asking Charlie the same thing.
Just one? Oh, come on.
I know there are many.
Well, it's hard to limit it to one. I'm going to say two, because there's two that I am most proud of. One is the downtown plan for Berkeley, which took 5 years to get done, was referended twice, was sued two or three times over the course after it was adopted, was eventually implemented, and it's really has a great success in downtown Berkeley. So I'm very proud of that. And thing that very early in my career, as Charlie, and I think you know, I worked on something called Room Enough Housing and Open Space in the Bay Area, which was for the then organization called People for Open Space, which is the first smart growth study in the country. We identified, and all of those ideas that we first identified in 1980 are now considered gospel. Develop second units in order to increase housing. Develop second units. Develop underutilized commercial land. Redevelop downtowns. All of those ideas were in that report. And I'm really kind of proud of you. Look at that 40 years later, and we were laughed at the time. They said, oh, well, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. That'll never happen. And it's all come to pass.
That downtown plan gets referenced by other cities
Really?
quite a bit, by the way. Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that. But anyway, that
As something not to do. No kidding. I'm just joking.
interesting-
Okay, second project.
That's my other one was my Room Enough Housing and Open Space in the Bay Area
Oh,
that I did in
okay.
1980.
Okay.
The interesting thing about the downtown area plan, one of the things we did as part of that in order to make it real, was we did an economic study of what you needed to do to get high-rise buildings.
Oh, okay.
How large a lot did you need to have?
That's critical, yeah.
How large a lot did you need to have? And what was the impacts of parking? What are the impacts of elevators in terms
Importance
of
of
how you develop
economics and
making
construction.
the construction work? Yeah. How do the elevators work? And we discovered you can't do 10-story buildings. You can't do 12-story buildings. The minimums, once you go beyond 8, which is still wood, metal frame, and concrete, you had to go to 14 minminimum. And that was one of the things, though, that our minimum, that's in our plan, 14.
Conclusions, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very,
That was groundbreaking at the time,
Yeah, it was.
for that kind of analysis.
yeah, I thought that was critical. It's one of the things I learned early on is how important real estate, that's another advice to people that want to be a planner, get a good course in real estate economics.
Yeah, that all keeps on coming up as a recommendation to students. What about you, Charlie?
Well, I also have two. One is a long range planning project, and the other was a current planning project, both in Emeryville. First is our general plan. I'm very proud of the Emeryville general plan, which we started after I was there for about 3 years. The old general plan, I mean, it was a good plan. It had all the right ideas in it, but it had pretty much mostly been accomplished. And the only physical copies we had of it were like fourth generation Xeroxes, which was, not the greatest, but that's not a good reason to redo your general plan, but it was one reason. Anyhow, so it was a 5-year effort. It was supposed to be 4 or 3, but it ended up being 5. We had a 16-member steering committee that represented all kinds of different interest groups in Emeryville. We had, I don't know how many, 20 or 30 public meetings. It was certainly the most extensive public participation effort that I've ever been involved in. We had, we did postcards and flyers and all the standard stuff, but to pretty much everybody in Emeryville. Lots of ideas, lots of debates, lots of panel discussions, all kinds of input. And eventually it got passed unanimously by the steering committee and the planning commission. We did have one holdout on the city council, but it did get passed 4-1 by the city council. And then right after the general plan was done, we completely overhauled the planning regulations, the zoning ordinance, to conform to the general plan. And that was another 3-year effort after that. But after those two things were done, we then had in place the framework for the future development of the city that really reflected the vision of the people of the city, which is what a general plan is supposed to do. And so, and it's served us pretty well. And by the way, it has in it some fairly outlandish ideas. I talked about don't stop dreaming about your outlandish ideas. It's got a picture in it of what the East Bay Bridge Shopping Center, where Home Depot is, will look like when it is transformed into an urban neighborhood. It's got a picture of streets and parks and stuff, with Home Depot still in the picture, things like that. So However, it is coming up on its horizon year, which is 2030. That's coming right up in about 5 years. I keep reminding the folks in Emeryville, time to update the general plan. And I know it's on their work program, it's on their radar, so they're planning to do it. But I think it served the city very well. The other project that I'm particularly proud of is the Sherwin-Williams project, which is now called the Emery, which is not a real creative name, but that's what it's called.
After Emeryville?
Yeah, go figure. So that is on the site, for people not familiar with it, that is on the site of the old Sherwin-Williams paint factory, which was built in the 1920s. And I actually got a tour of the Sherwin-Williams factory in the early 2000s when they were still making paint. So it was kind of cool to go in there and watch the paint being poured into the big buckets and stuff. But then eventually it closed because of the contamination of the site, and they finally tore it down. It went through a number of fits and starts. We actually had a proposal from Sherwin-Williams for development of the site in about 2003, I think, before the site, before the paint plant was shut down and before the contamination was cleaned up, because they knew they wanted to do something else with the site. But they've eventually ended up putting that plan on hold and didn't bring it up again until after the site was cleaned up. That was about 2016. And then it went through another big public process with the Planning Commission and the City Council. They adopted a PUD. And because of the general plan and the zoning regulation that we had put in place, it has this bonus point system for FAR height and density. If you want to develop up to a certain level, you have to provide public benefits. I think that's kind of a common idea now, but it was somewhat revolutionary when we started doing it. And as a result of that bonus point system, the Sherwin-Williams project has 85 affordable units out of 500. And the developer provided, I can't remember the exact number, but it was millions of dollars worth of public improvements, including undergrounding of utilities and new curb gutters and sidewalks in a neighborhood that didn't have curb gutters and sidewalks in every street, and lots of public improvements, and 3.5 acres of open space, including a new city park and the completion of the Emeryville Greenway. And I got to say, the architecture is not award-winning, I don't think, but it's nice enough, and it's some pretty nice buildings, and it's a really delightful environment to go visit. I hear from all kinds of people how much they like going to that park and going along the Greenway and looking at the new buildings. And it also has an existing Sherwin-Williams building that was kept, the only one that was kept, that was a warehouse and office building that has been renovated or rehabbed for adaptive reuse, I should say, for R&D use. I'm not sure if they have a tenant yet, but but it is a nice R&D building, and it's got this amazing, what we call a pass-through. It's got a tunnel through the building that's a pedestrian and bicycle path. It's striped as a bike path with like pedestrian sidewalks on either side of it through the middle of the building that connects the new city park to the bicycle boulevard on the other side. So I love going down there and just looking at this project and hanging out at that park. So I'm really proud of the Sherwin-Williams project.
And I don't know the Greenway too. I mean, that's a wonderful concept.
Yeah,
The common thing I'm hearing about both the projects first, being innovative, forward thinking, what really innovative ideas.
Absolutely.
And the community engagement, the buy-in process, Huge.
And I have to give credit for that pass-through idea to Philip Banta, who is an architect who was at the time was on our planning commission. He himself thought it was a crazy idea. Everybody else thought it was a crazy idea. He did a little sketch of it, and somehow he got some council members to agree with him. He got buy-in from enough key people, and lo and behold, now it's there. A crazy idea that is now there.
Well, maybe your idea sparked what happened in Alameda. I'm on the planning commission there, and there's a huge residential project where there's a public pathway.
Oh, really?
Street to the shoreline, right through the building.
Through the building, oh.
Yeah, so.
Great.
And just let you know, in San Leandro, talk about public process, working with Barry Miller, who you guys probably know as a planning consultant.
Sure.
We did the San Leandro general plan with a 52-member advisory.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. it kind of kept on growing. The council kept on adding people.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, I wanted to kind of conclude with a kind of two-part question, kind of looking at planning in the Bay Area. Kind of the broader issue, the past and the future. So, two-part question is how has in your years working in the public sector, how has planning evolved in the Bay Area over the years, and looking to the future, what would you say is the most critical planning issue facing the Bay Area? So let's see, who wants to start? Go ahead, Dan.
I'll start. Bay Area is kind of my thing in terms of my history of working on regional planning issues. How has it changed? Well, I started earlier about saying that 40 years ago, when we first came out with these ideas about how growth should occur, and Charlie said it, the vision of growth is contained cities and open space. That's what the Bay Area has done a remarkable job about, half of the vision. They've got the open space. We've done a pretty good job over the last 30, 40 years of containing cities. We have urban limit lines around a lot of communities that I've never thought we'd ever get them around. The idea of holding the cities from sprawling is also very powerful in most communities. And so it's become almost iconic now to hold on to urban limit lines. And that idea was not iconic that long ago. But we haven't done the reverse. The ideas were there. We had some ideas. I came up with many of those ideas many years ago, but we haven't implemented them. And so the big challenge, of course, the Bay Area is housing. And how do we build enough housing to accommodate the growth that we've got, that we've had, not much less that's going to come, but that we've had over the last 20 years, that we've not kept up with our housing demand. And so prices my kids barely can afford to live here. It's very, very difficult now to find a house in the Bay Area that's affordable. And we need to do better.
Yeah.
And I think we can. Some of the tools, we need some more tools, though. I keep thinking that there's we don't have some of the tools we need to make that happen. And
what would be one tool that you think
the most important? I wrote a piece on this a while ago. I wrote a piece on this a little while ago and put it in planning in one of our local Northern California planning. We need the ability to assemble land. When we lost redevelopment authority, which is being misused terribly, we also lost the ability for the public sector to assemble and clean up land. It's doing infill development is very expensive.
Yeah.
Every project is unique. The thing about suburban development and sprawl is that you can take the house you're building in Florida or Oklahoma or Bay Area. It's the same darn house. You don't have to do new architecture. The planning and the development of it is the same everywhere. And so you can basically industrialize it, which is what the big developers have done. You can't do that with infill development. Every project's unique. So it's very expensive to do infill development anywhere in the Bay Area. And any tools we can have to kind of begin to limit the risk and the amount of money that's invested up front will help to make that happen. Being able to assembling the parcel that you need to do the development, that's the first step. You don't know what's on the parcel. It could be dirty. And often they are these days. If it's been passed over, there's a problem with that property. How do you clean it up?
Yeah.
Those tools that will allow us to do better infill development would be invaluable in my view. We used to have them with redevelopment. Redevelopment was misused in so many ways that I didn't want to go there, but some of those tools were really valuable, and we need them again to be able to do the scale of development that we need to develop at.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and the other thing I hear is the infrastructure.
Oh, infrastructure,
costs,
absolutely.
Especially if you go higher density with aging infrastructure in a lot of these cities.
Huge.
It's a huge. And they're always trying to look for new financing tools to replace what redevelopment agencies used to allow.
Exactly.
So,
and cities are struggling. Oakland's infrastructure is a mess, complete mess. Streets are falling apart. The city that I live in, Oakland, is just falling apart. And that's true of too many cities. The aging sewer systems, aging water systems, all of it is aging. We've not invested in infrastructure in any way, at any level that we should be, in order to maintain it and to grow it.
Yeah.
So you're right. That's the other big item. And again, that's public sector. The public sector side of things that can help.
Yeah.
And neither the state nor anyone else is stepping up to do some of the stuff they need to do to make this happen, to make the level of infill development happen that it needs to happen at.
Yeah, and there's some new financing models out there, but they really haven't been tested yet as far as efficiency. What about Charlie? What,
Well, I agree. It would be great to have redevelopment back. A lot of
such a woke comment.
I know a lot of what Emeryville did from 1975 to 2012, February 1st to be
that's
precise,
true. Yeah.
was because of redevelopment.
Wasn't the city an entire redevelopment?
Virtually the entire city was in a redevelopment area. There was a few little pieces of it that were not, but about 95% of it was in a redevelopment area. So lots of tax increment funding. Unlike some other cities, we did not spend it on our cops and firefighters and other things that you weren't supposed to spend it on. I think, yeah, Emeryville had a pretty, had a lot of integrity, I would say, with its redevelopment areas, did what it was supposed to do. Speaking of cleaning up land, I mean, the Bay Street project in Emeryville is a prime example of that. That site was so contaminated. The city, or the agency, I should say, assembled the site, cleaned it up, and then issued an RFP and got the developer they wanted and built the project. And it was a great model. A lot of people were pretty devastated when redevelopment went away. So it is a shame that we don't have that tool anymore. How planning has evolved in the Bay Area, I've been, kind of thinking about this. And in some ways it has changed, but in other ways, I'm not sure it's changed a whole lot. I mean, when I had first got my MCP degree from Cal and was working in the Oakland Planning Department, was kind of a wide-eyed young planner in my, what was I guess I was in my 30s by that time. But anyway, I was still a wide-eyed young planner. The old geezers who were around who had gone to Cal in the 50s or 60s or whenever it was, they were espousing the same kind of planning principles that we talk about today. High density development, transit, developing the inner city and not the urban fringe, and promoting pedestrian and bicycle and all that kind of thing. So I think the basic attitudes of planners and core values of planning, I don't think have changed that much. The Bay Area certainly has evolved in over the last several decades. And I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, I guess, that housing is the number one issue. It was before, now it's become even more so. It just gets worse and worse all the time. When I first came to the Bay Area in the late 70s, you saw a few homeless people here and there, but not that many. Now they are everywhere, and it's just an absolute crisis. Yeah. And at the same time, housing is, these high-rise condos with these very expensive units. Well, if people can afford it, great, that is housing. But I think what that underscores is something that is beyond the reach of planners to fix, which is the wealth gap in the country. The fact that the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. And that's just a fundamental, I don't know if you'd call it a structural issue or what exactly it is, but it's something that's been gaining more and more momentum and getting worse and worse over the years. And I don't know how we fix that. As long as there are rich people who don't really care that much about the poor people, and the poor people who can't do anything about it, and the gap keeps getting wider and wider, we're going to have a housing crisis. And we're going to have a homelessness crisis, and that's kind of a pessimistic note to end on. But I don't see a fix for that. Yeah. But hopefully,
planners do have some responsibility. I mean, zoning, and
yes,
and the way that zoning has been implemented has exacerbated that problem in a lot of places. Not in Emeryville.
Yeah,
in Emeryville as like I said, I'm in awe of what's happened in Emeryville. But elsewhere in the Bay Area and in the country, zoning is a tool used for exclusion.
Yes, absolutely.
And and we are the keepers of zoning, and that's a real problem. That's been a real problem nationally and locally. And again, I don't want to end on that negative a note, but we have some responsibility.
Do you see that in your consulting work in cities that you?
Well, I try and. When we go in, it's really about process and how to make processes better. So I don't see it particularly I mean, I see see places which just are sprawling out, and they tend to be the more affordable places. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Texas and Oklahoma and some of these other places are more affordable than the Bay Area. They sprawl. They
Yeah.
sprawl and they sprawl and they sprawl. And
And land is cheap.
land is cheap. So that's the reason they get to. That's why they're cheap.
Yeah.
They've kept up with their housing demand. It's not necessarily politically correct to note that, but that's indeed the case.
Well, yeah, and part of the issue in the Bay Area is that everybody wants to be here because it's such a
Yeah.
Well, that used to be true.
well-
they can't afford to be here now. I'm not so sure that's quite what it
well,
was.
they want to be here, but they can't afford
There's
it.
enough people
I mean,
that want to be here that keep the prices high.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
obviously, this is a huge issue, and we could probably talk a lot
long time.
longer about that. But we've covered a lot. And unfortunately, we could probably cover a lot more, but our time is now up. But I just want to really express my appreciation for both of you participating in this interview. I think everyone viewing this interview will find it very helpful and hopefully inspirational, And even though we ended on somewhat of a pessimistic note, hopefully they'll see a lot of optimism
Yeah,
reflected in what both of you guys have done, and you guys are truly role models. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for putting this together, Hanson.
Thank you, Hanson, for
Appreciate
doing
it.
all of this. You've done your own great stuff in this Bay Area and done some really good work in Sunnyvale and San Leandro. It's pretty impressive. So I'm sorry that you didn't have a chance to talk a little bit more about your
Yeah, who's going to interview you, Hanson? You need to be up next.
Down the route.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.